Spool up and strap in. You're watching Simblitz. Today, we're taking another look at the CSS 737 Classic. It's just gotten an update and a fair bit's changed since we last took the aircraft for a fly. And while I cover the update, we're also going to be doing a test flight from Boeing fields all the way to Calgary. Today, I'm going to try my best and answer the question I've gotten the most. Is it worth it? Alrighty, so including today's flight, I've logged about 3 flights with this latest version. Some have gone with great success and some less so, but we're finally starting to see some updates come through. But first, let's rewind a bit. CSS released version 1.0, which brought the full FMC, IRS and DME navigation, along with a very basic weather and terrain radar. I think most would agree it was launched in a pretty iffy state. It was unable to follow VNav or LNav paths really at all. Any turn would incur a large bank angle and even resulting in the aircraft falling out of the sky. But since then, the first update came out, version 1.2.2.2. This introduced visual refinements like ambient occlusion, exterior weathering, panel lighting, along with other minor things like improving the rivet detail. So overall, it got a nice visual improvement. Not only that, it was also the big update that brought LNav and VNav stability. Now, this didn't fix everything, especially for the autopilot. However, it was the first time I was able to get the aircraft to follow a VNav path. Along with that, we also finally got the official paint kit, which now brings us up to the latest update, version 1.2.2. Finally, we got the EFA screen jitter glitch fixed. Along with that, the flight control computer was tuned a lot more. LNav no longer cuts corners, the autopilot for the most part obeys bank limits, route changes in mid-air no longer cause a crash to the aircraft. The only issues I've encountered on especially this flight was direct to would cause, for some reason, it had set the altitude to 50,000 feet. But with all the updates out of the way, let's get into this flight. Alright, the APU is online, and thankfully I've done a couple of flights to refresh my memory because the startup is slightly different to the NG and Max, but it's time to get started and get out of here. We've got now very short taxi clearance over the runway 32 left. So I'm going to start taxiing over there now, and we should be there in just a second. One thing I'm noticing is I'm needing to give it a bit more power than I'm used to kind of taxi along here. I'm not sure if that's changed in an update, but it also could just be me, but it's worth noting. Just a side note, the glitch you're seeing right now is just a glitch on my yoke. For some reason, it just has a bit of a wig out when it's first connected. And here we are, one short taxi later. We're holding short runway 32 left, and we're ready to go. So I'm going to taxi slowly here onto the runway, and we're going to take off out of here. Alrighty, and I'll try and stabilise the thrust at around 40%. And toga. I'll just keep downward pressure on the yoke until we get to 80 knots. And rotate. We'll bring the landing gear up and we'll just keep on climbing out. We haven't got much weight today, so we're absolutely flying out like a rocket ship. Alrighty, so we're getting radar vectors to our first waypoint, which is Alpsy, and from there we'll resume our normal navigation, but for the moment it's mostly just headings. So far the aircraft's feeling really good. I'm remembering a few things that I don't like about it at the moment. One of them being is the sounds. The engine sounds are just horrific in my opinion. The only other thing that really kind of annoys me is how hard it is to fly in the simulator. Now, that's not necessarily because it's unrealistic. It's probably closer to too realistic in the sense that it's an old cockpit. A lot of the work is manual, and there's no real help in the simulator to kind of simplify some of the things, which means it's really easy to fall behind the aircraft. What I mean specifically is on the departure, I was given 3 different radio frequency changes, and this is all while I was being vectored. So it's 1 minute I'm hand flying to turning on autopilot to then changing the frequency to then going back to the autopilot, and all that time I'm not able to look and see if the aircraft is behaving correctly. But anyway, we'll talk more about that once we get up to our cruise. But now we're at our cruise, you know what time it is. It's finally time to chat. So let's talk about this aircraft and the update. I absolutely want to love the CSS 737. The 737 Classic is by far one of my favourite aircrafts of all time, and I think CSS are trying to do their best job at making this aircraft amazing in the simulator. In my opinion, it still is falling short in some areas, but we also now have clear communication with the team, along with some updates that have genuinely improved the aircraft. It went from something that was pretty unflyable to finally something that's flyable, isn't fully feature complete or really polished yet, but it is flyable. Some of the caveats, the performance is in 2020 is just horrendous. It really is horrible comparing to any other aircraft, at least on my machine. I've got a 4090, 64 gigs of RAM and a pretty decent processor as well. And this is by far the worst performing aircraft I have in the simulator. Along with that, it's probably one of the worst sounding planes I've also ever flown. These are all things that no doubt will be fixed in the future. It's just in this present moment right now, these are the issues that I have with the aircraft. And the last big thing that's kind of hit or miss is how complex this aircraft is, and not in the terms of fidelity, but in terms of there's no assistance in, for example, company route request or sending the EFB data to the FMC or auto-tuning radio compatibility with Beyond ATC, which unfortunately make it quite hard to fly. Especially when you're getting a tower clearance to land very last minute, you're getting handed off from approach. You need to look down at the radio, and if you're on a visual approach, you just can't do that. Along with that, compatibility with hardware is a big thing as well. Trying to get things like my Stream Deck or radio panels to work, you just can't because they're using custom variables, which typically aren't used, so you just can't link them up, it just doesn't work. And the last gripe I have is just the EFB. It's personally not my favorite. It's slow, it's clunky, it's just not very intuitive. I like the design, I like the simplicity of it, but for example, when you request a ground power unit, having to wait that 10 seconds for it to just load and appear just doesn't make sense. It, I think, should just be instantaneous. Just click it, let the ground power spawn in and work, along with other things like the performance calculator. Although it's realistic, it's just not intuitive. It's slow, it's clunky. I hate using it. If they can improve things like this just to make it more simple, make it much faster and easier, it'll make the aircraft much more enjoyable to fly. But either way, we've reached our top of descent, and it's now time to start our approach. And we've gotten our approach clearance. So we got it pretty late, so I'm kind of descending down pretty quickly here. I've got the speed brake out, which again is kind of putting this aircraft in its stress limits, because you can fall behind the aircraft, you got to switch frequencies, everything's kind of manual, and these things happen. You get late descents, you can get rushed through into the airport. So this is kind of pushing the aircraft to the limits and showing where it kind of lacks, in my opinion. So this is a great example. So right now we've been cleared from 35,000 feet down to 11,000. So I haven't really had time to brief the approach, look at the charts much. I've just had to quickly glance at them, check the ILS frequency along with the course, and start preparing for our approach as we're literally descending through 10,000 feet. And you can see this is where I come into one of the biggest issues for this flight. I've got my descent altitude set to 6,500 and we're descending through 8,000. I'm just dialing in the ILS frequency and I have to look down at the nav panel, and suddenly I hear the altitude warning horn, and I just assume that we're approaching to level off, but by the time I look up, I'm already getting sync rate warnings, and we've blown through our altitude, still descending through 5,000 feet. So I have to quickly disconnect the autopilot, go into manual flight, and climb back up. From this point, it kind of sets an oscillation effect. You can see that I'm quickly falling behind the aircraft here. I'm not making this turn to final quite as nice as I'd like it, along with struggling to get the speed and altitude under control. So I'm dumping some flaps and I'm going to get the gear down just to bring some drag so it can give me a bit more time to get stable. You can see now I'm a bit low for the approach, so it's just a matter of waiting this out. Everything's kind of calmed down and we're stable again. So after a bit of a crazy approach, we're finally lined up to touchdown. It was a bit of a short flight, only an hour or so up in the air, but it was more than enough time to stress me out in this aircraft.
100, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
We're finally on the ground now, and we're just rolling out. I'm going to do a very short taxi over to the Air Canada hangar, where we're going to park this up. For the most part, the takeoff and the cruise was very uneventful. It was a little shaky and bumpy with the winds, a bit more than I'd expect, but for the most part, really stable and really good. It was the approach where everything kind of fell apart. I'm not sure if that dip was because I did something wrong, or if the aircraft, for whatever reason, was just descending so steeply it shot through its altitude hold. But either way, it was a bit of a bummer. But nonetheless, we managed to get the aircraft down safely, and I think for the time being, I'm going to be keeping this aircraft in the hangar. I'm going to be watching very closely as it gets updated, because this is my favourite aircraft. It's just, at the moment, there are a few things that need to get fixed, and it just makes it too hard to do the flying that I enjoy personally. I hope you guys kind of enjoyed this review/update video on the CSS. It was great to take it out for a flight again and check out the update on this aircraft. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, it helps me out a lot, and be sure to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Let me know down in the comments what you'd like to see next, but until then, I'll catch you next time.